It's Mahia May.
Many of us overthink our sample chops. That's where I went wrong when I started today's sample challenge. I used the website Samplette to find 10 samples, but I could only flip one of them. Restraint provides direction when chopping samples. And after I play this beat, you'll see how limiting my choices forced me to become more creative. And you'll learn how to apply this mentality to your own beat making process. It's your boy Mahia Made, and this is how I approach this jazz sample. By the way, the sample that I decided to go with for this sample challenge is called But Beautiful by Kenny Dorham. In order to flip the sample, I used the VST Serato sample. What I did to the sample before I began to chop, I pitched it down by -2 semitones. I was looking for sections that caught my ear and I was just trying to see how I can piece them together, but that's where I started to go wrong. With jazz samples, it can be a little bit difficult to piece different sections together because oftentimes there's just so much going on in the record. And that's where I started to realize I was just overthinking my sample chops. I decided to go with 2 or 3 chops that stood out to me, and let's listen to what I decided to go with. So that was the first chop. This is the second chop. So now that I had my main sample chops out the way, I knew that I wanted this beat to have a second section, but with this second section, I wanted to filter out that top end from those main 2 chops. Because I decided to limit myself with the amount of chops I was able to use, I had to become more creative with my sample chops. So what I ended up doing is opening up another instance of Serato sample, but this time what I did, I pitched it up +10 semitones. I reused one of the chops from the original Serato sample, and this is what it sounds like. And that's what I mean by getting more creative with your sample chops. Sometimes you can reuse your sample chops, but use them in different ways. It's all up to you, you just have to be creative with it. Which leads me to my third chop. With this third chop, I wanted to use it more as like an accent. I already knew in my head that I wanted to throw some delay on it, so I kept the chop very short and simple. This is what it sounds like. So really quickly, I'm gonna solo out everything but the sample chops, just so we can see how they work together. After I stopped overthinking my sample chops, it made the rest of this beat making process so much easier. So after I had gotten my sample chops out the way, it was time to get to the drums. This is a drum break that I thought fit best with those sample chops. Really quickly, with just the drums and the sample chops, this is what they both sound like together. So now that I had my drums and sample chops, I wanted to make the beat just a little bit more interesting, so I decided to add these textural sounds. This is just to provide a little bit more movement to the beat. Next up, because it was a jazz sample, in my head I just pictured this city-like scene with some rain pouring in the background, so that's what I decided to add. And then finally, to finish off, I added this city ambience. So as far as the beat goes, that was pretty much everything. I kept it very simple, but now let's start digging into the effects because it's part of what allowed me to limit the amount of sample chops I use for this beat. So for the 2 main sample chops, I decided to add this fruity parametric EQ. That way it can separate the second part of the beat by taking off all of that top end. And that allowed the other chops to really shine through. So for the chop that I pitched up +10 semitones, the only plugin that I decided to add is this H delay by Waves. I put it at a 1/4 note delay. I put the high pass at 200 Hertz. That way it deducts some of that low end. And then I also did the same thing for the top end, bringing it all the way down to 2000 Hertz. Finally, because it is a jazz sample, there's just so many elements to it already. I really wanted this chop to only focus on the trumpet sound. So the next thing I did, I once again EQ'd the bottom and top end, allowing that trumpet to really shine through. Now for the final chop, I once again added H delay, and I left it at the exact same settings. The only difference is that for this chop, I left the panning at centered, while the previous chop, I moved it to 35% to the right. And finally, I applied the same type of EQing as I did to the previous chop. So as you guys can see, even though I decided to limit myself with the amount of chops I use for this beat, by using creative tools like delay and EQing, I was able to make the chops that I did have a lot more interesting while still fitting the feel of the beat. And the crazy thing is this type of mentality can provide you endless results. Like I mentioned earlier, you can reverse the sample, you can add delay, you can add a reverb. There are just so many tools that can make your chops sound a lot more interesting. You just have to be more creative in the way that you approach it. So that was all for this sample challenge. I'm gonna go ahead and play the beat in full so we can hear how everything sounds like in context. So as you guys can now see, it's not about the amount of chops that you can find within a sample. It's about what you decide to do with the chops that stand out the most to you. That's restraint. Restraint is also a part of the Alchemist drum selection process. Click on the link above to see what I mean by that. If you gained any type of insight from the video, please leave a like, please leave a comment. It's really gonna help the channel grow. With that being said, I'm gonna catch you guys next week for a new video. Until then, stay blessed.